Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberkaş. It was his second visit to Central Asia in just a week. On Thursday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan attended the Economic Cooperation Organization Summit in the Uzbek capital, Tashkent, a regional gathering that brings together Central and South Asian leaders. President Erdoğan used this year's summit to address the West's silence to what's happening in Gaza.
Westerners, who constantly talk about human rights, freedoms, and democracy, are watching all these Israeli massacres from afar.
President Erdoğan called on leaders and the Muslim world to come together to speak out against Israel's continuing attacks on Gaza. He also pointed out to the serious challenges of rising food and energy costs and stressed that a fairer global economic system is needed. Founded in 1985 by Turkey, Pakistan and Iran, the ECO grouping works to improve political cooperation and economic development in the region. The current trade volume between ECO states is valued at $85 billion. Erdoğan urged members to push that number to $100 billion in the short term. And now for more on the ECO summit, joining me now from Lefkoşa is Assel Tutumlu. She is an associate professor at Near East University. And from Baku, Cavid Veliyev. He is the head of the Foreign Policy Department at the Center of Analysis of International Relations. Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Assel, the Economic Cooperation Organization has held its 16th summit in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. What are your key takeaways from this year's summit?
Well, I think we need to basically look at the agenda, and there is a conventional agenda and unconventional agenda. The conventional agenda obviously fits within the parameters of the organization. It's all about trade, investments. It's about the energy, mineral resources, and these topics have been dominating the discussions. At the same time, the unconventional agenda, taking into consideration the existing geopolitical context, is related to not only the situation in Gaza, but also the aid to Afghanistan and the green economy and the green energy transition, which are indeed very important for all the countries that are members of this organization.
So, Cavid, Turkish President Erdoğan made a speech at the summit where he once again blasted the West's hypocrisy over Gaza and called for an immediate ceasefire. How was it received by the member states? Can we talk about a collective approach to this by member states to the Gaza conflict?
You know that some member of the ECO, also member of the Organization of Turkic States, on 3rd November, they held a summit of Organization of Turkic States. They adopted declaration, Astana Declaration. At that declaration, they adopted common position on Gaza issue. They concerned regarding the escalation of violations. They condemned targeting the civilian people and civilian targets, and also they supported the solution of Palestinian issue based on UN resolutions and two-state solution. So from that point of view, as a many member of the OSCE, the member of the Organization of Turkic States, they adopted a common position from that OST. And when we look at the UN General Assembly resolution on Gaza issue, they also supported Turkey's position on that UN resolution.
Yes.
But in details, I think that they have, in some details, they have different approach, but in general, they adopted common position on Gaza issue.
So there is a consensus.
Yes, there is a consensus.
So,
we can say.
Okay, Assel, moving to the conventional agenda, let's say, of the summit, the total population of the member countries is more than 528 million, and they do $85 billion in trade a year. So does the current trade volume and the production capacity of these member states live up to their potential?
Well, certainly, according to many countries, this particular potential can be increased. And we have seen, for example, President Erdogan was talking about the increase to $100 billion, which is doable, particularly taking into consideration the geopolitical situation with the Russian war in Ukraine and now with Israeli attacks in Gaza. All of this establishes the desire and also the need, a very important need for alternative corridors that are safe and that are also not necessarily under sanctions. And the particular, for example, the middle corridor is one of those routes where we have seen that since 2022, the sheer volume of goods that transferred through that corridor tripled. So we are going to see a much more activity and also the desire to transfer not only cargo goods through the rail, but also through transferring energy resources and other goods through different other means, such as, for example, automobile roads and pipelines.
So, Cavid, as Assel mentioned, one of the big issues for the ECO summit and the region is, as a whole, has been improving transport links. How important has the middle corridor become, which Turkey plays a central role, and what should be done to further boost the organization's economic effectiveness?
Okay, middle corridor, the corridor between the Turkish states, starting from the Central Asia, passing through Azerbaijan, Turkey to Europe, but it became more important, especially after the Russian-Ukrainian war, because of sanctions imposed on Russian transportation corridor by the EU countries. And I think that nowadays, middle corridor, it's a very important corridor, not only the regional state and also for the Western state. But we have some barriers, some problems with the middle corridor, especially the customs barriers, especially the tariff barriers. And in the framework of some regional organization, the member states trying to solve this problem. Well, they have signed some important agreement on this issue, in order to prove this. To solve these problems. Without solving these problems, I mean without solving the custom tariff problem, we cannot increase strategic importance of middle corridor. And by the way, middle corridor is a very important corridor in order to improve trade relations within the interregion Organization of Economic Cooperation Organization. And without transportation corridors, we cannot increase our trade relations or increase investment or economic relations. That's why we strongly need to improve middle corridor in our region.
So, Assel,
but it's also very, just a second, Ayşe, can I just intervene? I think it was also very important to note that what Uzbekistan, for example, has proposed to have the multimodal corridors. Of course, this particular notion of multimodal corridors have existed before, but in this particular summit, Uzbekistan actually proposed various other alternatives that can bypass, for example, Kazakhstan, that can bypass the northern corridor, so to say. And in that sense, we are going to see a lot more activity in that direction as well.
So
here, both corridors from Kazakhstan and from Turkmenistan, they connect to middle corridor or the Trans-Caspian corridor. That's why corridor through Kazakhstan or through Turkmenistan, they go through Azerbaijan and connect to middle corridor. But when we talk the Trans-Afghan or Trans-Asian corridor, they have some security problems nowadays.
Yes, sure. So, because I was going to ask this, I mean, although stability in Afghanistan was addressed at the summit, Taliban officials were not invited as none of the member states recognize its government. How long will they be left out of these regional summits, and would including them help address the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan as well as in the wider region, Assel?
Well, I think that Afghanistan, all of each member state will continue to work bilaterally with the government. We have seen that different delegations have actually visited Uzbekistan, they visited Kazakhstan, and even though officially we don't necessarily recognize the government, nonetheless, there are intense negotiations that are happening, particularly because of the Hoshtepa, the water reservoir that Afghanistan is doing, which will significantly decrease the water flow into the riparian rivers, riparian states of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and all the other Central Asian states that are very much dependent on Amudarya and Sirdarya. So we are going to see, we are going to see a lot more effort bilaterally, but I would be skeptical about invitation of Taliban government to various international fora in the future.
So, Cavid, besides Turkey, what kind of a role could Pakistan play by enabling landlocked Central Asian countries to gain access to the sea?
As you mentioned, the Central Asian countries, the landlocked countries, some of them are double landlocked countries. They need to access open seas, oceans.
Yes.
They are energy-rich countries, but they have no direct connection with the open seas. In order to diverse their export in energy issues or other resources, they need alternative corridors, alternative links to the open seas. But unfortunately, as I mentioned before, today the main alternative for them, the middle corridor, because European countries, European Union imposed sanctions on Northern Corridor. The Trans-Afghan, they used to be Trans-Afghan corridor, but because of security issues, they cannot realize this corridor, and that's why today Central Asian countries focus more on middle corridor.
All right, Cavid and Assel, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.